Well, back to our story on the gas boom, and a man who follows this rapidly growing sector very closely is Dr Graeme Bethune, who's the head of oil and gas advisory company Energy Quest. And Dr Bethune joins me now from Adelaide. Welcome to the program, Dr Bethune.
Hi there.
Well, as Neil Woolrich pointed out in his report earlier in the program, there are about 18 LNG projects either under construction or in the planning stages. It feels like the gold rush of the 19th century. Is it going to end the same way?
Well, the gold rush of the 19th century was really the precursor to the mineral discoveries then in the late 19th century and the 20th century. So for Australia, it's been the rush that never ended, and hopefully that'll keep going.
Well, Qatar is currently the world's biggest producer of liquid natural gas. If all these projects come online, will we overtake them?
As you say, Qatar is certainly the largest producer at the moment. I mean, Australia's target isn't necessarily to overtake Qatar, but just the 7 projects that are under construction at the moment, plus the 3 we already have in production, would mean that our capacity does overtake Qatar towards the end of this decade.
And in terms of export income, is liquid natural gas going to become the next iron ore?
LNG should get pretty close. At the moment, LNG is Australia's 7th biggest export. As you say, iron ore and coal are the biggest, and with the projects just under construction at the moment, that should leapfrog LNG into the top 3.
Well, like iron ore, China is shaping up as Australia's biggest customer for LNG, but many people have doubts about just how much Australian LNG China will buy. What's your take on that? China's
got a very great need to increase the amount of gas it uses to try to clean up air pollution, and as a result of that, we've seen huge numbers of long-term Chinese contracts for Australian LNG, and that's underwriting a number of the projects that are underway at the moment. They're all 15 or 20-year contracts. So regardless of the day-by-day economic news in China, they're already underwriting these projects.
My understanding, though, is that China is looking at a number of alternative suppliers to Australia, such as piping gas in from places like Russia and Turkmenistan, which is a lot cheaper than Australian gas. And there's also the prospect that the US and Canada will expand their production and sell to China. It seems that at the very least that would increase competition and probably keep prices down, if not suppress demand for Australian LNG.
No, well, all of the 7 projects that are under construction at the moment are all underwritten by contracts from Japan, China, Korea, Taiwan. So what might happen about competition from other countries isn't really that relevant. What's most relevant is that Australia is currently building more LNG projects in the one place than has ever happened before, and what we need to do is make sure we get them done on time and on budget.
So from your answer then, you believe Australia does have a diverse array of customers for its LNG?
Oh yes, it does. I mean, there have been all of these projects are underwritten before they start construction. Nobody builds an LNG plant, costing $10 or $20 billion without having it underwritten by the customers. So the customers sign the contracts first, then it's our job to build them.
Citigroup believes the LNG industry may struggle to raise about half the $300 billion it's planning to invest in the next decade. Do you accept that view?
Well, it depends how many projects you're talking about. As I say, Australia's got 7 projects that are actually under construction at the moment. I mean, there may be more than that, but as I said, that's already more projects than have ever been built in one country at the one time. A number of the Australian companies like Santos and Origin have recently done quite successful fundraisings to underpin their projects. So I guess we're all focused on what's happening in Europe and all those kinds of things, but financing certainly doesn't seem to be a constraint so far.
Well, on the issue of money, and you just mentioned Santos, I mean, how big a threat to the viability of these projects is cost overruns? And we saw last week that Santos's GLNG project pulled forward $2.5 billion in expenses, which some are saying is a euphemism for a cost overrun. Are we likely to see more of that?
Certainly cost overruns are a risk. Australia generally doesn't have a good record there. And for that matter, the LNG industry globally doesn't have a good record. It's more common to have cost overruns than to have projects completed on time and budget. But what happens with individual projects depends on how well they're managed by the companies and how good their cost estimating is to start off with. And it's certainly in, I guess, all of our interest that these projects are profitable, because the taxation of them is based on their profitability. So the more profitable the projects are, the higher the tax revenue and benefits for Australia.
Dr. Graeme Bethune, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.